Hello everybody. I'm Colleen Benelli, the Reiki Lifestyle Podcast, here with Robyn. Hi,
Hello,
Robyn.
everybody.
And our guest today, Rosalyn Acosta, and we are so glad to have you here. Hi, Roslyn.
Hello, everybody. It's so nice to be here with you guys today.
So I'm going to do just a short introduction of Roslyn and let you get to know her as she's going to share her story. But Roslyn, the one thing I didn't ask you is, where do you live?
I live in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense. So Roslyn is the founder of Live, Heal, Travel, LHT, and she has a mission to illuminate lives that inspire positive change. She has a range of services, including Reiki, shamanic energy healing, corporate mindfulness workshops. We didn't even get a chance to talk about that yet. And eco wellness retreats. And the one thing that we did talk about with the eco wellness retreats is that is inclusive of families. So children, small children to adult children. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. You can find her at livehealtravel.com, Live Heal Travel Instagram, and Rosalyn Acosta for LinkedIn. So Roslyn, I know today we want to talk about your experience with shamanism, shamanic healing, but also one of the things we talked about was prenatal care, and then also talking about Reiki for kids with big emotions, parenting, and of course you and Robyn are both mothers with kids in the same ballpark of age ranges. So I can talk about it from my perspective way back when, because my kids are in their 40s now, but still, even at my age, I'm still a mom, still a grandma. So yeah, that whole role and how we use Reiki for that. So what I would like to do, though, is go ahead and just start with you and your story and what brought you to energy healing, shamanism, Reiki, and where you are today.
Sure. No, thank you. Well, I feel like I had a big career pivot during COVID, like so many others, and that's where my path with energy healing really started. I was kind of just thrust, the universe was like saying it's time, because I had been wanting to do something more in the wellness space for a while. And I just couldn't quite figure it out. And so, yeah, I did my level 1 and 2 with William Rand. And then I did a master level with Jennifer Bryn. She's here in Sausalito in California. Continued. I've done crystal reading training and an extensive 6-month shamanic energy medicine training with the Four Winds Society. So I've just kept on adding on, and it felt like a coming home for me, because ever since I was really young, I always, just like so many other energy healers out there, just had a heightened sense of empathic, intuitive abilities. And at the time, I would just tell my mom, my sisters, little things, but just never felt safe or accepted to share that, right? So having this training, the Reiki, the shamanic training, everything, it was just like a coming home of letting myself out, right? That it's good, it's safe, I can share it, and right now, and I can, and help others. So it was just beautiful. So I really thank the universe for just opening that up to me. And that's where I am today. So I have my business, Live, Heal, Travel, and I work here in the Bay Area as well as remotely, and just offering those services for other people.
What was that pivot? I'm curious. Many of myself included, many people that are in Reiki and energy healing businesses came from a corporate background. There was a story there around that pivot. And so I'm just curious as to what that is, what that was for you as well.
Yeah, no, I've done throughout my adulthood, I've done a lot of different jobs, but only one stint in corporate. It wasn't very long. My background is in sustainable travel. So I have a master's in ecotourism that I got in Scotland. And so I've spent a lot of time as a steward of the earth, like a real earth keeper from a conservation background. And I still love that, and then I took time off because I had 3 kids, and I just wanted to focus. Like I worked part-time when I had 1 child, and then with each consecutive child, I found it, well, okay, this is just too much for me, right? I just want to focus on the kids. So it was kind of that career pivot in terms of, am I going to go back into my previous career, or am I going to do something else? And I really felt like doing something in the wellness space, the well-being space. And so that was the pivot where it's just like, okay, it's energy healing. That's what it is.
Yeah, I love that because too, I would imagine through COVID, you had to think about travel, right? And how that all looks, as well as, I know it's more complex than that with children and stuff like that, but that, really was like everybody was so thinking about that at that time frame.
Yeah, it was hit hard for sure during COVID. Yeah.
And then you said, I think when we were talking before, you were talking your shamanism training. Did I hear you say that you were working with Peruvian shamans during that, or did I miss? I might have missed.
Oh no, so the Four Winds Society, and it's founded by Dr. Alberto Viodo, and so he has a really interesting background where he's a medical anthropologist by trade, and he went and studied with shamans in the Andes and the Amazon for over 30 years, and he had his intention was not to become a shaman himself, but that's what unfolded. And then through his studies with them and them giving him permission to share this through the West, because in the West, they feel like that's the new shamans. The new shamans are coming from the West, then if you maybe call it a neo-shaman. And so he created this amazing curriculum and also includes his background with neuroscience. So it includes the ancient traditions of neuroscience, with also being respectful. So there to what's the indigenous knowledge that they have their still sovereignty over their knowledge. He's just created this new curriculum that's for the West, and it was beautiful and it's so insightful, and yeah, it's helped as well in my life so much and others.
Well, fantastic. So I know we want to get into the some of the travel and stuff, but one of the things, as Colleen said, that you have found solace in, I'm sure, all of your energy medicine training, but I know Reiki, that with parenting and children, and so and ourselves through parenting of children, because that's a big piece of it too. So how are you using Reiki in your children's lives, I guess, would be kind of the first question. Some things that you might do with them, or some of those kinds of things, because I definitely do as well. And so I'm curious. I always like to talk to other parents that are in this space, because it's like, oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, the first point I like to make is I talk about energy healing. I talk about our energy bodies with my kids. So it's not, it's just an open conversation. I talk about it with my husband. And so it's something that they're aware of, which I think is the first part, right? And then when I try to do little mini sessions, my oldest child's 11, so he's able, to be still for, I'll do like 10 minutes or something. And he's just like, wow, that's amazing. My legs aren't sore anymore from soccer, or whatever, like what he picks on. It's really interesting. At nighttime, do a little bit to help them fall asleep, just a little, send them a little bit. And then I like to so I have a pendulum. I use it really frequently in shamanic training, but also you can use it in Reiki. As you guys know, you can use a pendulum to check your chakras, and especially the two little ones. Well, they all love it, but the two little ones, that's what really gets them excited. They're like, can you check me that way again? And then, so if one's having like a meltdown one day, I was like, oh, come here, let's check and see what's going on. And you know, they kind of, the visual, like let them to see what's going on. And then my daughter is like, oh, can I try it on my dolly? And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's not moving, is it? No, why? Because it's a dolly, you know? So we just kind of incorporate little fun aspects with it, and then just talk about it and kind of get them to see what they can sense too. So it's just make it fun.
Yeah, it's just a part of your household. Colleen, you're on mute.
And I say that's a great idea with the pendulum, because I would think it would almost like bring a shift just in what they're focusing on. Suddenly it's like, oh, what is this? And there it is in which chakra.
Yeah. And even when my 5-year-old, when she was like 3 or 4, she was having a horrible moment. And I just kind of picked her up, carried her to the bed, and just sent a little Reiki to her heart. And it just helped calm her down. And she's ready to play again. So yeah, it's just doing little bits here and there, and how, you know, it's age appropriate.
Yeah. I always say that you have to meet them where they're at, you know, with age, where they're at in their emotions. I like the idea of the pendulum. I haven't used that with Luna yet. But I know she would love it, because she loves all the rocks and the, you know, sparkly things. And I can remember, because I was raised in this, in these ways. You know, Colleen started her studies when I was like a preteen, and I can remember the pendulum. We got them at Saturday Market, Colleen.
Oh,
yeah. Or, yeah. For those of you that are here in Portland. And so we got them at Saturday Market, and I can remember probably being 12 or 13 and having our own pendulums and playing with the pendulums, and you know how much that kind of stuck. So that's a really that's a good tip. I like that. Yeah. It's about meeting them where they're at, what they're focused on. They're not gonna, most of them are, especially like you said, in your older, they're gonna ask for things like sports or tests, or, you know, I want it for this or that. And then sometimes they'll come in with the deeper stuff, but it really is about meeting them where they need it, where they're at, and it just being a normal, everyday part of life.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about dreams and just different aspects that correlate with it as well. Just getting them more aware, and also of, you know, as a healer, we're always using our clair senses. So also just talking about that in ways that they can be open if they are, because kids are so intuitive as well. So if there's something that they are experiencing that they feel comfortable to share. So that's always nice too.
Yeah, try to keep them in their remembering as long as possible. You know, I think that that's a really big piece of it, because eventually, you know, through peers and things like that, you have some of them that, you know, don't go into like kind of the forgetting of their innate gifts and things like that. You know, there's some kids that just stay within that. But I know for Luna, you can already see that starting to take place. And but she's at the age where she goes in and out of it still, you know, where she'll go into her, and especially if she's around me or Colleen, or, you know, we're in these spaces. My mother-in-law also is, you know, has extensive shamanic training and does all of this kind of work as well. And so you can see her, she'll go into it, but then, you know, there's other times when she's in her school and, you know, friends and stuff like that, where she kind of goes into that side of her. And
Taylor
so
Swift.
Yeah.
She goes into her Taylor Swift mode. And but yeah, just keeping them trying to keep them in the remembering as long as possible, talking about these things. And I think for you said it's just a part of everyday life, and that's the same for us. You know, it's a part of her bedtime routine, and it's part of
Mhm.
like, asking her those questions. Well, what does your heart tell you about that? What does your intuition tell you about that? Things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I feel so passionate about it too, because I just know for growing up, I mean, what a gift that you grew up with this. And I always wanted to be, in an environment similar to yours, right? Where, and in a society where it's acceptable too, where it's not something woo woo, right? And so I feel like it's so essential for kids to have this as knowledge, as a kind of like a toolkit as they grow up, because it'll help them when they're dealing with life's challenges that will come to them the older they get. So that's where I feel really
Well,
passionate about it. Hmm.
and being a mother now and a grandmother and having gone through both raising my kids with this and my grandkids with it, and from a long-term perspective, I think the idea of really meeting them where they're at is is so helpful. And then just also staying within my own being an example of it. And like you say, kind of just the everyday discussions. And, as Robyn started off learning all of this young and then moved into the years of, embarrassment of mom, like, mom, stop chasing my friends around with your hands. She'd say, Mom, sit on your hands. I'd be like, I can do Reiki. And of course, we were all, and back at it, really doing the shamanic work back then too, and soul retrieval. So it was interesting because she and her friends actually all had soul retrievals too. And
Mm.
watching that shift in them, where, really brought in life changes and
Mhm.
life changes that affected them. Now today they're in their late 30s, early 40s, and seeing that still present, from the work that they've done and the interest they all still have,
Mhm.
and then applying it to my grandkids and each one meeting them where they're at with it. With my oldest granddaughter, so empathic, really helping her learn how to manage her empathy
Mhm.
with it, because now she's 17, so she's gone through, I remember her third grade year was the really big year, and then seventh grade going into middle school was huge with the empathy because of picking up all the kids' other feelings. And
Mhm.
Robyn, like
Yeah,
you
of
were
course.
describing, Luna going into that, back and forth place of the childlike wonder,
Mhm.
the remembering of who she is, and then into the peer pressure and how they navigate all of that and how helpful Reiki can be. Um, but also, I want to ask you guys as mothers how you're using it for you. So, how's
Go
it?
ahead, Roslyn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I do daily Reiki on myself, so that helps. I feel like in the moments of emotional turmoil, that's when I kind of really dig down into it, so I can kind of take my moment. So it's helpful for a parent to remain calm, remain centered during the trying big moments, the big emotions. So that's where I find it very helpful. And also just even just doing mindfulness practices of like deep breathing, that's very helpful as well. Like 4-4-4, the shaman's breath. I do that a lot, just a few rounds, and that'll just okay get me out of those emotions that are swirling around me and then affecting me. So um, yeah, that's what first pops into my mind.
Go ahead and even describe more about the 4-4-4 breath.
Yeah, so in Reiki, shamanic training, mindfulness training I've done, just using your breath work is so essential. So the 4-4-4, so you inhale for 4, and you're using your nose, not through your mouth. So inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. So it's the shaman's breath, or they call it the box breath, of 4-4-4. and that brings your body back into homeostasis. So it's really nice to do that one. You can also inhale for 4, exhale for 8. That drops people down deeper. So I do that a lot with my clients when they come in, to like when they're on the table, to just, or when it's virtual, I'll kind of guide them through that to get them to drop in. And then I tell people just play around with the breath, because conversely, if you need a pick me up, you can inhale for 8, exhale for 4. So you like double the inhalation to exhalation ratio to help you in however you're feeling at the time. So there are all these different methods, but it's very helpful for sure.
Tools in your tool bag.
Mm-hmm.
Luna asked me, Mom, why do you breathe so much? Because I'm a mom, a working mom. Just being a mom is enough.
I know.
I do. I tell her, I say, she's like, God, you sigh a lot. I'm like, well, that's because I'm breathing out the breath that I just took in. She just asked me again the other day, reminded me, and I was like, I said, explained to her, I said, well, this is my tool to help me be in a different space before I respond or react. And, all of those kinds of things that we need. And I said, I try to tell her, it's like, sometimes you just need to take a breath. And that's what I'm doing, is taking a breath. And I would say that just like, as you were saying, Roslyn, that's really what Reiki helps me do, whether it's self Reiki or sessions from others when I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I think too, I'm not perfect. There's times where I lose my cool. There's times where even I might raise my voice, as much as like I would like to admit that I never do. It happens from time to time, and letting her know that happens, and that what you do is you apologize and you try to do better next time. And there's all of these things that you can have to try to not get you into that space where that happens. Also, letting her know that sometimes we have emotions, and you have to sit in your emotions sometimes, that it's okay to feel angry or frustrated. And I will communicate to her, not all the time, but from time to time, and be like, well, I'm feeling very frustrated right now, because these are normal human emotions. And sometimes when I communicate to her, it actually is a little helpful for me. I don't put it on her. I don't mean it that way. And it's not like I do that all the time, even when I'm feeling frustrated, like it's like maybe 1 in 20 times that I'll say that to her, but it actually shifts us a little bit. It helps to let her know that this is where I'm at. I'm trying to breathe through it. I'm trying to let her know that we all have these emotions. And it also actually helps her to realize that, oh, and she's 7.5 now. So these are the ages where these things can kind of start to set in. It's a lot different when Rosalyn, you've had kids and you still have like kids in these ages. So it's a lot different for your 4-year-old or 5, right? 5-year-old and down in those ages than it is now for like a 7.5-year-old, where they can kind of have these concepts. Before, I wouldn't maybe share as much of those kinds of things, to kind of let her know that, like, I have these emotions, I'm a person, and it's not to put my stuff on her. It's more from how it can sometimes be that, let her know that that's normal. Like, we're not expected to be perfect all the time, but what matters is that how we try to move through it in ways that are considerate of other people. Even though I'm frustrated, I'm not taking it out on you. I might just say that that's the emotion I'm working through. Sometimes it can be that I'm crying at something sad or something like that. Let her know, like, these things are okay. And when she goes through it, it's like, this is very normal. It's okay that you have these. And then also, here's some things that you can do. Like you said, Rosalind, breathing is a really big one. And then Reiki is a really big one. And I do think that sometimes we're at a point where things get to be too much. And like that to me is an indication, oh, here's where I need a session from somebody else. Because like my reaction point is lower than normal. My overstimulus, being overstimulated is lower than what it is normally. So yeah, there's so much, and I'm not saying that that's like my tool go to, but that's what came out about sharing. So I'm just going to let that be a part of what comes out of sharing. Of course, like, it all starts with me, and I know that. So I'm not saying that I'm like, oh, I tell her every time that I'm frustrated, it's just, it's like, there's just normal emotions that I think we have. And I do think too, that in a lot of what we see is that there can be this kind of guilt about not being this gentle parent all the time, which I fully agree with that. So I'm not putting anything on that. I'm just saying that for me, it's like, well, that may not necessarily be my 100% of the time natural reaction. I have reactions. And so it's like always helpful to me to hear that other parents do too. And I just try to be as conscious as possible and try to do better next time.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you have to show them that you're, like you said, you're human. You have to show them you have these emotions too, and this is how I deal with them. So then they can be like, okay, so when I get mad, maybe I can do what mommy did when she got mad. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and you wrote an article on Reiki, using Reiki to help kids during big emotions. And so what I'm hearing from both of you is using Reiki for when you have big emotions. But Roslyn, also, do you want to talk about what you are doing with that? Did you say you're writing a book about it or a course on it?
Oh no, I'm not writing a book. Maybe someday. That's not
add that to the list.
That's not on the list right now. Oh my gosh, I might like my head might like. No, but one of my intentions is definitely to offer a training program for youth. So I'm going to start trying to figure that out more this year. Maybe launch it next year, and use my 11-year-old case study to train him first, and go from there. But I really like to do that. Because once again, it's invaluable. And I think back to before there was all the social emotional learning in schools, meditation that's being taught so much in the United States and in Europe now, but before it wasn't. They did it in India for their school children and other places, but it's just nice that things are catching on. And I feel the same with energy healing. Like, why is this not taught? Because we all have energy bodies. And it'd be really helpful for people to know what's going on in their energy body, how to regulate that. And so I feel like at a young age, as young as possible, for them to start learning and employing whatever methods that they want to use on themselves that feels good for them to regulate themselves and balance themselves.
It's always so interesting because when teaching classes remotely, so I'm in my home office, and the things that Luna does when I'm teaching and in the energy work is really extraordinary. I don't know, Roslyn, if you see that, like when you are doing the energy work, as we know, like you said, the energy bodies, and it filters in through the house and out and throughout the house, and that entrainment even in us, as we're really in it and carrying those vibrations. She'll make really interesting art. She'll, be really involved in her crystals, and her rocks and things like that. And there's so many different examples, but those are the two that are coming to mind. Do you see that with your kids too?
Yeah, definitely. Like when you're raising the vibration of your home or whatever space you're in, yes, it definitely has an impact on others around, and they may not know, because sometimes I'll just raise the vibration and not tell them what I'm doing. It just as an experiment, my scientist, right? Like, let's just do this experiment, see how everybody is. And, they're like, oh, it's all calm. Wow, that's interesting. Everybody's doing their thing. Or like you said, your daughter, like they're in their flow doing, like my daughter loves art too, or whatever they're doing. It's nice and definitely does impact. And you just kind of you can relate to that too when you tell adults or youth, just how many times have you walked in a room or just like, oh, you're put off and the energy around this person is just really putting you off. It's the same thing, right? Like you're picking up on their negative energy as well as you can pick up on the positive energy, and just it can affect you both ways, right? So I kind of use that correlation because people always can think really quickly, like, oh yeah, I remember that one person I was around and I wanted to stay away from them. So I always kind of use that first because everybody can think of an example.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was giving my older grandkids Reiki attunements and having them, move into the silence, like you guys were saying, meet them where they are. And of course, they were young enough, they couldn't hold being silent. And so I had them do craft projects, and watching the shift. One of the projects was making paper flower seed bombs that you plant. I don't know if we call them bombs, but seed
Yeah.
little flower pods. And so I was having them draw on the paper before we were going to, make it into pulp for the seeds, and watching the shift from what they were drawing to when we moved into the Reiki energy completely changed with no instruction, because I also wasn't requiring them to be silent. And so the conversation that was happening between them, and then the moment I started with the Reiki energy, they moved into their own silence. Not that they didn't talk here and there, but they moved into their own silence. Their pictures completely changed. The energy of it all completely changed. And of course, it was a super fun project because they got to plant the seed bombs or seed pods. And, we still have wildflowers out in my backyard from them that they can see every time.
That's beautiful. That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, Luna, go ahead, Robyn.
Well, I was just going to go kind of back to the big emotions thing, and, also wrapping this around to the tools that we use as parents, in parenting. When they do go into their big emotions, that is always a place that I activate Reiki immediately. And I may not have the chance to do any self Reiki, but it's a Reiki on situation. And that is when I'm going in, okay, so what's going to be the most helpful in this situation? And it's going to be different for every age range. Teenagers are going to be very different than the 7, 6, 9-year-old is going to be different than 5 and under in how to respond. But, responding calmly, not taking on their stuff, because that's one of the really hard things, is not to take it on to the level, that empathy, which I'm going to have naturally. It's not going to get rid of it. But sometimes if there's a grumpy mood, sometimes I'll take that on like it's my, job to fix this. And if there is, these big emotions as far as any sort of meltdown or, sadness or anger, if I can activate Reiki, it clarifies for me. It's kind of like this channeling process of, okay, what does she need right now? How can I support this? How can I help her move through this? How can I, rather than just trying to fix it or trying to, all of those kinds of things that, I just kind of allow Reiki to channel, and it exudes to her. I give it to her. But then there's more than just that. It's more than just calming down sometimes. It is about how do we navigate this too. And as a mom, I find that's really helpful for the situations.
Mm-hmm. And I like to also share, and also I share with adults too, just the difference between feelings and emotions, how feelings are good. They're fresh, they're present, they flow in and out. But emotions, you want those to move through as well. And that's why so often, like, if someone's in a bad mood, and or how many people have, maybe yourselves or someone else, have heard, held a grudge for some reason, hold it to some other person. You held a grudge for a long time, weeks, months, years, right? And that's very unhealthy. So you want to get those toxic emotions out of your energy body or energy field. So I always, with kids and adults too, let them know that, like, the difference and why it's good to have this fluidity, this movement of passing through and not letting the emotions just become stuck, because that's when, more stuff can arise then from that as well.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really great.
Well, so what I was going to say is Luna actually really knows and experienced herself receiving Reiki when I was doing Reiki with Robyn when she was newly pregnant. And in a Corona Reiki class, and we were chanting, and it just came out this huge chant that went right into her belly, and this little seedling going, because it was so loud. But anyway, I know that you also work with prenatal care with Reiki and women. So do you want to talk about that too?
Sure. I feel like, Reiki's for everyone. So I feel like the prenatal Reiki is just a nice gift. It's a nice gift for me to experience, because of course you can easily hang out with that little energy field that you're picking up on. You're like, oh, that's so cool. But you're like, no, go back to the mom, go back to the mom. But it's so beautiful, and it's just nice to offer that to the mom, and just because she's giving, as you know, we all are moms, so it's a marathon being pregnant, right? And it's just like there's so much that entails emotions and physically. Oh my goodness. So it's nice to give her that moment of just working on her energy system, so she can, because there's still a separation, right? I feel like when you're pregnant, it's hard for you to feel separate from your baby, but letting her have that, like, you are still your separate being, and this is your chance to clear up whatever you need to clear up, feel whatever balance you need to feel. Because I just feel like that's so important, because it's so easy to just I am just one with the baby, which is beautiful, but, and I'm very guilty of always doing that each time I was pregnant, and just oh yeah, I need to give some love and attention to myself. So that's why I love giving prenatal Reiki for the moms.
Well, I would think that would carry through with postnatal also, because that is, don't you think that's such a theme already of, everything becomes about the child and remembering some self-care.
Yes.
I see both of you shaking your heads like, yes.
Yeah. I always commend the moms too that are actually doing it. And when I was pregnant, I did a lot of prenatal yoga, because that really helps for, when you can't breathe anymore, that, you're getting squished inside, and it was just essential. And I just always commend moms that are doing whatever self-care, whatever stage of motherhood, because it's so easy. Even when you have adult kids, it's so easy to just still be wanting to focus on them, wherever you can help them and fix their problems, whatever, right? So it's nice to always remind people, moms and dads.
And because you do prenatal sessions too, right?
Yeah, no, there's no difference. The only difference is just how you orient the body so it's safe and comfortable for the mom. But
Well, Roslyn, there's a lot to you and your work. So I'm actually going to also, this session kind of leads into this. Kind of what do your session styles look like? Because you combine Reiki, shamanism into your sessions. And so what does that look like for you as a practitioner? And how does that all work for you?
Yeah, oh no, thank you. Well, when someone's coming to me for Reiki, I just focus on Reiki. but invariably I'll pick up on something. And how I integrate shamanic medicine with that is just doing some little extractions where it's clearing, not a full extraction, but like clearing some of the crystallized energy that I'll pick up on. Like that's, so there are crystallized and fluid energies. Fluid energies, you need to use a crystal to clear that up. But the crystallized ones have been around a long time, embedded in your energy body, and everybody has them. It's kind of like equate it to weeding a garden. So, and they come in different forms. So when I'm giving Reiki, I always find crystallized energy. I'm like, I'm just going to clear this up. And so I kind of just safely remove it, send light to it, and just carry on with the Reiki session. But that's one way I always incorporate it without necessarily saying I'm doing a shamanic Reiki session. That's not my intention. If they're coming to me for Reiki, I'm giving them Reiki. But that little bit, I can't help it. I got to pick that out. I got to get, because then it helps more with the flow, and it just helps with the healing, because you don't want that in there for, I just can't leave it in.
It's like having, like you said, it's like having a weed in a garden.
Yeah. So that way, if someone's coming to me for shamanic energy medicine, then that's different. And I always people always ask the difference. I feel like if you compare it to, so you have a general practitioner doctor, right, in Western medicine that kind of does an overall look at things, and then they refer you to specialists like an ophthalmologist for your eyes or whatnot, right? So I feel like Reiki is your general practitioner, the overall well-being, right? And you're just really working on all the chakras. And for me, in my practice, the shamanic energy medicine is really allowing me to pinpoint specific energetic imbalances and using different techniques specifically for that. So whether it's getting rid of the crystallized or fluid energies, doing extractions, cutting cords, doing soul retrievals, whatever it is, so you can be more specific in the energetic imbalances. So it's kind of more like a surgeon, I feel like. But they work so well in tandem, as Colleen probably knows as well. You can share, but I just feel like Reiki and shamanic energy medicine is a nice complement. It's nice to offer both, because if I'm doing a Reiki session and I'm picking up on a cord, if I didn't have that other prior training, I'd be like, well, how do I get rid of that? Or what would I do with that? And then, I can, tell the client, at another time we may want to do this, or I've had Reiki sessions where I've seen their souls. Usually I have to do a proper soul retrieval, go to the underworld, retrieve the souls. But for people who have lost a lost soul part really recently, for example, I saw one woman, she came to me for Reiki, and a week prior she was sexually assaulted. And I'm like, that makes sense why that soul part's hanging out over there. It's so fresh. But I just let it be, and in time, when the time is right, it'll be integrated back in and she can do that, but not right now. So it's nice to have all these, for energy healer, all these different tools to use to help people.
So I also am really interested in your eco travel with families, because I think that when we were talking about it, for those of you listening, we were talking about it before we started the recording, and with Roslyn, and I just am not very aware of too many opportunities to travel with children in the style that you're speaking of. So do you want to share about that? And I saw on your website you have some trips coming up, but also what's involved in that, and how is that so family friendly and kid friendly, and how does all that work, traveling in a group with people and their kids? So can you share that?
Yeah, definitely. So before my career pivot into energy healing, I've worked in sustainable travel in different forms. Whether it's researching, when I worked at Stanford, I worked at the Center for Responsible Travel. That was more research focused, doing field work on the impacts of tourism in different destinations, or when working for tour companies or creating my own tours and leading trips to Cuba or doing field work in Papua New Guinea or whatnot. Like it's really about travel that is eco-friendly. It's really helping with the environmental aspects. And also it's bridging authentic connections. So you're not just going for, if you want to just go to a resort, stay in that resort and have that experience, that's one type of travel. But if you want to go and really interact and have a local experience and learn from locals, have exchanges, and also have your tourism dollars also knowing, okay, so I took that art lesson, it's going back to that artist and it's helping them keep their art form alive. Or I went and I volunteered and I helped plant some trees, did a little bit of reforestation. So yes, I'm doing a little bit of my part to give back to the environment in this community. So there's a lot to sustainable travel. And, people would say, if you want to be a sustainable traveler, just don't travel, because then you're not emitting emissions, but people are going to travel. And so it's just doing it the best way you can. And then, so I wanted to bring that to my energy healing business, all my background in that, and offer, I call them eco wellness retreats for families, since I'm heavy in the families, bring a trip that I bring my children on, and ways to make it family friendly across age groups, right? So for example, I'm launching 3 next year: spring break to Hawaii, the Big Island, and then summer it will be in Peru and Turkey. And so, for example, in Hawaii, we'll meet with a Hawaiian elder. She'll talk about spirituality and different aspects of her culture, the Hawaiian culture. And then some ways to integrate the conservation for the younger ones. We're going to go to an aquaculture farm to learn about seahorses. Maybe they get to touch a seahorse if they can. But just learning about the different aspects of that. And then also different farm visits, coffee farm, chocolate farm, so really integrating different aspects that are relevant to Hawaii. And then goes the same for all of the tours. So also you can, in Turkey, we're going to take a culinary arts class in the home of a local family. So they can actually learn traditional dishes from the family. And so just dabbling in different experiences like that is really, really nice, because I also have an arts background. So I really like also connecting with the arts, because outside of the West, arts and nature, it's synonymous, right? So they don't always separate. So it's really nice to include that as well. And yeah, and it's for all ages, aunts, uncles, grandparents, everybody can come.
Colleen, you're muted.
How many people typically go on the trips?
Well, the group size is capped to about 20. We still want to be intimate. So how many families, but we'll see how many people sign up. But yeah, that's kind of the goal, is about 20. So it's not overwhelming. You're not like on this big tour bus with trekking through places. Yeah, no.
Trying to herd cats.
Yeah.
Well, and then you're also going to Peru too, right?
Yeah, and then Peru, you can, so obviously all the wonderful Sacred Valley, Machu Picchu sites and everything, but also integrate, like in Lima, there will be meeting with a shaman, and as well as in Cusco, meeting with a shaman. So you can include that part for the experience for the kids as well, just to experience a traditional ceremony and a healing, and just add that. But even in that one, like we're incorporating, you'll visit a llama farm, like some different fun things, and also a lot of interaction with other youth. So there's this organization that the youth are like the guides for birding. So we'll get to meet with them. So just really trying to make it a well-rounded experience as well.
That sounds fantastic. And so needed in the space, because I know so many people would want to travel that way, but like you said earlier, it's hard to do if you have children.
Yeah.
Because it's just not set up quite yet. I'm sure there's people out there that do it, but it's not well known yet. And the eco aspect of it, this, conservation, the giving back, and like you said, art, because kids are going to really relate to that. And sometimes when you travel with children too, you don't know of the things that you can do that are going to
Exactly.
keep the kids interested, that are local, that are,
Mhm.
and all of those things. It's like, oh, that's really a neat thing for them to be able to do. I love
Yeah,
that.
I
So,
think that's the benefit of it too. Like, and like how you guys were talking about decision fatigue before, like just how it really alleviates all that planning off of the parents' shoulders. So, like, okay, I want them to do this, but so it's like in Hawaii, they'll do a lei making and a hula making or a hula class and like all these different experiences. And like you said, it's sometimes hard. There are so many resources out there, but sometimes hard to find those authentic experiences. So you really have to do a lot of research. And if you're just tired, I don't want to create my family's trip and itinerary. It is nice to have everything just taken care of, and you can relax and just go with the flow.
and for the kids to learn at these ages,
Mhm.
like I think about, even just being able to, as an adult, being able to say, yeah, when I was 12, I went and planted trees in the Amazon, in the rainforest. And, like those kinds of experiences are for them are unbelievable and bring such a different level of awareness. And then thinking
Yeah.
to the other people that are there that have, you're with like-minded people, and how
Mhm.
wonderful that is for kids as well, to see that connection from like-minded kids, especially in these modalities. Like, it is getting more
Mhm.
popular, but sometimes they're, some of the only kids in the space in their spaces
Mhm.
that might have similar um parenting styles, or think, like this kind of home life. And to get to meet other kids that are doing the same thing is
Mhm.
really good. And then of course us as adults being with other parents that are doing things
Yes. Yeah.
the same. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And it's nice to also like in each trip, it's most of it, like it says what's included, most of the meals or whatnot, but we do offer a chance, like, so there are some like dinners, a couple dinners or whatever that's not included in the tour price, because we want people, like, we also acknowledge as families, you want to also be able to explore on your own, have your own free time too as well. So we don't want to dictate like every minute of every day. Leave some free time open so families can regroup on their own as well.
Well, I think it's also, in bringing back up the idea of decision fatigue, that how nice to have someone else making a lot of the plans so that it's not left to the parents to do all of the planning. And then
Mm-hmm.
also, of course, the experience of kids getting to see other cultures and lifestyles. And, I know we were in Egypt and went to a village, a small fishing village, and the life there, and thinking of
Mm-hmm.
what that would be like for kids to have been on that trip and get to experience that lifestyle. Because
Mm-hmm.
I loved the photos I was able to bring back and show to my grandkids. And the kids are just happy and playing and having a good time, and a completely different culture and
Mm-hmm.
completely different lifestyle, that I think it's great if you can take kids to those kinds of cultures for them to get to have that experience.
Definitely, it opens up their eyes, and it's good to also get them out of their comfort zone, and just see their different ways of living that have strengths, weaknesses, just like our way of living, right? And it's so refreshing too to experience that.
Yeah, I love that part of travel, period,
Mm-hmm.
just getting to see other places. And I was just laughing the other day when we were in India, and how the kids would run up and want to take pictures with us. So,
Mm-hmm.
can I take a selfie with us? And one of the ceremonies we were in, and I kept noticing these kids would run up and touch me, and then they'd run and they'd laugh. They were little boys, maybe 8 or 9 years old, and they'd all laugh, and I'd see them talking to each other. And then one other one would run up and touch me, and then they'd laugh again. And finally, I realized that, I was like a foreigner, an obvious foreigner in the middle of their small town with their ceremony, and how fun that was. And of course, then I started playing with them and having
Mm-hmm.
time with them. But it's so great, the idea of kids getting to be on those trips with you and
Hmm.
getting to have those kinds of experiences.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So that's why I'm putting it out there to share it with others, because as a mom too, like creating our own travel experiences, it's been fun, but it's also, it can be overwhelming to do that as well. So, yeah, so I can relate.
Make all the decisions, right? All day, every day for all of it. Yeah. And that way it's so much of it is done for you. I love that.
And one thing that's evolved in sustainable travel is before it used to be like carbon offsetting to offset your emissions, and I'm including a small fee that does carbon sequestration. So with a partner, Tomorrow's Air, and they partner with other entities that do the carbon sequestration of taking the CO2 out of the atmosphere. And so I just like to share that, because that's a little thing. I mean, you can obviously, I'll make it available. So if people want to donate more to make more of their emissions, to kind of sequester more, then they can. But it's a start. Just every little bit helps, right?
I don't think I'm familiar with that. Can you share a little bit?
So traditionally, carbon offsetting is where, so say you'll contribute to a reforestation project somewhere, or a different in some other aspect, but lately it's also carbon sequestration. So there's one company called Climeworks, and they have built. I mean, I don't know all the technical ways of how it is, but you can do carbon sequestration from the air. They do it in the ground. You could put it into rocks. So there are different ways of storing the carbon dioxide. And so that's what's really been one of the techniques that they're hoping that travel can integrate more to offset the impact on climate change is carbon sequestration. So I just like to say that through that partnership, I'm trying to also bring more awareness of that, because that's such a huge concern as well, and especially going on a trip with the next generation who are going to have to deal with all of these impacts more than we are. It's nice to bring that to light as well.
Bring that to their attention this early.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the trip. So is
for
that
the
true
adults? For the
for the
adults,
adults? Yeah.
yeah.
Is that part of like a donation process, or?
Yeah, it's just a donation. It's a small one that's included at like $20 in the fee, but just to start the process. I mean, in my ideal world as a sustainable expert, I'd love to just be like, we're gonna do the whole shebang, like every emissions that we can calculate, we're gonna just do that, but it'll bring the trip cost up a lot. So I like to just say, okay, I'm gonna do a little fee, and then give the option if you want to donate more to offset more of your costs. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you share with us some of your, what you have upcoming, and how people can reach you again,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
so
no, thank
find
you.
you.
Yeah, no, you can go to livehealtravel.com, and I have on the homepage, I do have an offering. I call it a 20-minute virtual energy Reiki session. And I feel like that's a really good way, if you're new to it, to kind of try it out. So it entails like a video call where we'll chat for, 5 minutes before. I'll do the 20 minutes of Reiki, and then we'll kind of debrief for 5 minutes afterwards. But you'll be surprised, even in that amount of time, there's wonderful things that can happen. So I created that for myself, because I felt like there are a lot of people that I'm always educating on, what is this, how does it work. So I feel like it's a very easy way to try it out without committing. And I've been getting really good feedback about that, and appreciation for offering that introduction. So that's on the homepage. It's just a 20-minute virtual session, and also introduces the aspect of virtual Reiki, because people are like, how does this work? How is it possible? Right?
And trusting it, right?
Mm-hmm. So I always like to put that, but also people can always reach out to me. I offer clarity calls. So if you just need to talk, I offer, free clarity calls if you have any questions about it. And then also, again, if you're interested in taking your family on a trip next year, spring break or summer, and don't want to deal with the hassles, definitely take a look at it. And it'll be nice to have anybody join.
Roslyn, do you do in-person sessions too?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I do in person in San Francisco and Marin, because
Okay.
like Sausalito, like
Yeah.
of that area. And then because I have 2 studios, one in San Francisco and then also in Sausalito that I rent. And then I do virtual sessions as well.
Okay. Awesome. And where do people find you at your website? But you also do have some social media. So you said you were
I'm on
more
Instagram
active
and
than.
yeah.
Say that again.
Yeah, and I'm on Instagram where I post more about the upcoming things, and then LinkedIn as well.
Awesome.
And Instagram is Rosalyn Acosta.
Oh no, Instagram is just at Live Heal Travel.
Okay. And your website is livehealtravel.com.
.com.
Okay. Great. Well, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to add that we haven't talked about yet?
No, I mean, one thing that you mentioned earlier before the call, I just like to encourage people to explore energy healing. So even if you are skeptical or just are curious or whatever reason, just give it a try, because you'll surprise yourself and you'll be pleasantly surprised. So I just really encourage people to, we all have, like I said, we all have these energy bodies. Just take a moment to get to know it a little more and how to cultivate your own. Everybody has their own, we all have clairsenses. So get to know that side of you more, and it might open up a whole new realm for you. You'll go down a wonderful rabbit hole.
25 years later.
Yeah, definitely. Rabbit
Yeah.
hole.
It is. Well, I think that is Jan's book, Through the Looking Glass.
Mm-hmm.
The cover of it, Jan Inglesmith is my shamanic teacher, and her book, Through the Looking Glass. It's actually her daughter, but you can't tell that. And she's looking down through the rabbit hole.
Or a wormhole, could be one or the other. Sometimes that's like, it's light speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is
Roslyn,
fascinating and effective. That's the biggest thing is, we often talk about all the different types of healing, and people will ask me, well, what does it do? And I think kind of a simple explanation is what heals a broken heart? What heals being stabbed in the back? What heals, trauma? What heals stress? What heals even sometimes the little things that add up? As we were talking about decision fatigue, what can bring clarity of mind, and all the way from the really big injuries that heal all the way to the little ones that add up, that assist us. And for me, it's just my life management tool. All of these are how I manage my life. And we did talk about being a mother with young kids, but I'm also a mother with older kids in their 40s and grandkids. So kind of going through the gamut of, parenting with adult children, which I'm really no longer in the parenting role, more in a, I guess, mentoring, or just not even mentoring, just, living together as people, in a different way than when they were young and needed parenting. So.
Yeah, definitely. And also, it makes me think of, so much of our talk has been on also youth, but also I conversely, like, my mom, she has moderate dementia, and just seeing, my scientist, again, I like do these little experiments, and just to see the impact that Reiki has when I give her a session. I'll give her a session, and for an hour afterwards, no repetition, no, like, just relaxed. She is not repeating herself. It's just, it's definitely helpful for everybody. And yeah, so I'm a definite advocate for everybody to go out and give it a try.
Absolutely. Yeah, with our elder care for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a big part, of course, at my age, big part of my life with my parents and then my in-laws who are now 96 and 92 and, caregiving for them.
Mm-hmm.
And also they're still very capable. So what's the role and how Reiki helps and all of the roles through their different stages and then my different stages with them and how all of that works. So
Yeah.
yeah, interesting.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity and the conversation with both of you. It was delightful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you, Rosalyn. All right. And for Colleen and myself, we can be found at ReikiLifestyle.com. My socials, Robyn Benelli Reiki. I'm mostly on Instagram too. So, and then Colleen's is Reiki Lifestyle. And I would say you're mostly on Facebook, Colleen. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, to our listeners as well. As always, lots of love to you all.
Yeah. And we're also on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of travel, I should at least mention, I think this is airing before our Reiki retreat in Sedona.
It is, yeah.
That is upcoming over the Labor Day weekend and wonderful, wonderful retreat at the Mago Center. And then William Rand and I are also teaching in Japan in the end of October and beginning of November. So that's another really great way to do Reiki on Mount Karama. So thought I'd mention that too. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Roslyn. What a great conversation today. We really appreciate you being here and sharing your voice and your message and the gifts that you share with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, everyone.
I know.